This recording was never meant to be publicly found in the maintenance archive of Hub 7, buried under 40 years of climate logs and structural integrity reports. No name attached, no timestamp, just a small silver data chip sealed in a vacuum case with a single handwritten label pressed onto the surface and faded marker for after. Someone cracked it open in 2089, and what they heard changed everything people thought they knew about Atmosphere Day. But before we get into this, if you've ever wondered what it actually felt like to be one of the first people to breathe lunar air without a helmet, without a suit, without a seal, hit subscribe. Because the story you've been told is only half of what happened. The sky above Shackleton Base is pale amber in the morning. Not because of dust. The dust settled decades ago, but because of the nitrogen mix in the lower atmospheric layer, which scatters light differently than Earth's oxygen-heavy envelope. The old-timers say you never get used to it. The ones born here say they never knew anything different. Elena Voss was born on the moon in 2041. She grew up in Hub 3, one of the older residential sections, where the ceiling is lower and the corridors still smell faintly of sealant and recycled water. She is 53 years old now, and she has never been to Earth. She has no desire to go. Her mother, Margaret Voss, everyone called her Maggie, was one of the original technical crew who arrived with the Meridian Group in 2019, back when Shackleton Base was still 6 interconnected pressure domes and a prayer. Maggie spent 22 years on the moon. She helped build the atmospheric expansion network. She was there on Atmosphere Day, March 14, 2041. The day the last external seal was opened and human beings walked outside without suits for the first time in the history of any species. The official record of Atmosphere Day is beautiful. The images are clean. Director Haraldson cutting the ribbon at the outer airlock. The first team stepping out onto the regolith in ordinary clothes. Someone crying. Someone laughing. The anthem played over the base-wide speakers. Every child born on the moon in the following years was told this story in school. Every documentary uses the same 30 seconds of footage. It is a perfect image. It was designed to be. Maggie left a different version. The data chip Elena found in Hub 7's archive contained 14 hours of raw audio. Her mother's voice, recorded over the span of 3 weeks in early 2041. Not a formal report. Not a memoir written for posterity. Just a woman, alone in a maintenance bay after her shift, talking into a recorder because she needed to say it out loud to someone, even if that someone was only a machine and a future she couldn't see clearly. I want somebody to know what actually happened, Maggie says in the first recording. Her voice is tired but steady. Not for now, maybe for later, when it doesn't matter anymore in the way it matters now. 6 days before Atmosphere Day, the pressure gradient along the northern expansion corridor failed a calibration check. Not catastrophically. Nothing exploded. Nothing vented. No alarms went off in the main operations center. But the numbers were wrong, and the team responsible for signing off on them understood exactly what wrong meant in this context. The atmospheric envelope covering the expanded surface area was only as safe as its weakest pressure boundary. If the gradient held incorrect readings, the models predicting safe breathable conditions outside could be off. Not by much, but enough. Maggie was the senior atmospheric technician on night shift. She ran the diagnostics herself twice. Then she filed a formal hold request, a recommendation to delay the Atmosphere Day ceremony by a minimum of 72 hours until the corridor sensors could be physically inspected and recalibrated. The request was denied within 4 hours. Dr. Farrow called me directly, Maggie says in the recording. Her voice doesn't rise. She doesn't sound angry. She sounds like someone describing a weather event. Something that happened outside her. Something she observed without being able to stop. He was polite. Very polite. He said the political situation on Earth was delicate, that the funding review was in 6 weeks, that the ceremony had been announced to 2 billion people, and that my concerns had been noted and reviewed by the engineering committee. She pauses for a moment. I asked him if the engineering committee had seen my actual diagnostics or a summary. He said a summary. I asked him who prepared the summary. He said he didn't have that information. The hold request was withdrawn from the system. Not by Maggie, by someone above her. someone whose name does not appear in any of the maintenance logs from that period. The original request was replaced with a single notation in the record: concern reviewed. Resolved. Cleared for ceremony. Atmosphere day arrived anyway. The morning was, by every account, by every image, by every interview given in the years that followed, extraordinary. Elena, born that same day in the base medical bay while her mother was still on shift, didn't experience it consciously, but she grew up in its shadow. Hearing the official story so many times, it became part of the architecture of how she understood her home. What Maggie's recording describes is this: at 4:40 that morning, 3 hours before the ceremony, she and 2 colleagues ran a physical inspection of the northern corridor sensors. They found exactly what she had suspected: a calibration drift caused by a microcrack in the sensor housing, slowly leaking thermal data into the pressure readings, introducing a systematic error of approximately 4%. 4% in Earth atmospheric pressure. 4% is a rounding issue, a footnote, the kind of margin engineers absorb without a second thought. On the lunar surface, with an atmospheric envelope that had been gradually constructed over 18 years of careful engineering and was still, by any honest measure, young and untested at this scale, 4% was the distance between fine and not fine. It was not a theoretical concern. It was a real number with real consequences. And Maggie had spent 2 decades learning how to read real numbers in a place where mistakes could not be walked back. Maggie and her colleagues corrected the calibration manually. It took 2 hours and 11 minutes. They did not report it through official channels, because official channels had already made their position clear. We fixed it, Maggie says in the recording. And there is something in her voice that is not quite pride and not quite grief. Something that sits between the two and doesn't have a clean name. Nobody knew. Nobody asked. The ceremony went ahead on schedule. At 8:15, Director Haroldson cut the ribbon. The first team walked out onto the surface. The images are still displayed in every school corridor in every hub across Shackleton Base. Someone cried. Someone laughed. The anthem played through the speakers in every room, every corridor, every workshop and laboratory and kitchen across the entire settlement, and people stopped what they were doing and listened. Maggie watched from a monitor in the maintenance corridor, still in her work suit, hands faintly dirty from the sensor housing. One of her colleagues offered her a cup of coffee substitute. The real thing had been a luxury item since the last supply delay 18 months before. She took it. They stood and watched the screen together and didn't say much. Was it worth it? She asks herself in the recording. And this is the moment Elena said she had to stop. She had to sit with it for a long time before she could continue listening. Fixing it quiet, Maggie says. Not report. Not making it official. There is a longer pause than the others. I think about that a lot. We did the right thing technically, but I'm still not sure we did the right thing. If that makes sense to anyone who wasn't standing in that corridor at 5 in the morning with the numbers still wrong on the screen. Elena Voss found the recording in 2089. While clearing the archive ahead of the Hub 7 expansion project, she listened to all 14 hours over the course of a week. She sat with it for another month after that, not quite sure what she was holding. She was not sure what it was asking of her. She is, by profession, a structural engineer. She has spent her career building the next layer of what her mother's generation built. She has never thought of herself as a historian or a keeper of records. My mother wasn't a hero, Elena told the Shackleton Historical Society when she finally came forward. She was a technician who found a problem and fixed it. And she didn't receive credit because there was no official space for that credit. The story was already written. There wasn't room in it for a maintenance corridor and a calibration kit and 2 hours at dawn. The recording, that is what it is called now, capital letters. The way important things eventually get named, whether anyone plans it or not, is stored in the public archive. Anyone can listen to it. All 14 hours. It is a tired woman talking into a recorder in a maintenance bay, describing clearly and without drama the gap between the story that was told to 2 billion people and the thing that actually happened 3 hours before that story began. Maggie Voss died in 2073, at 67, from a cardiac event. She is listed in the base memorial under technical personnel, Meridian Group. No specific contributions noted. There is a word that comes up repeatedly in the historical literature about early lunar settlement. The word is resilience. It is used to describe the settlers as a collective, their capacity to adapt, to endure difficult conditions, to build something lasting in an environment that was never designed to support human life. What the word tends to quietly erase is the fact that resilience is never abstract. It is not a property of programs or institutions or founding documents. It is a thing that specific people do, at specific moments, often without anyone watching, without any record being kept, without any reasonable expectation that the record will ever matter to anyone. Maggie Voss and two colleagues spent 2 hours and 11 minutes on the morning of Atmosphere Day correcting a problem that the official process had decided not to look at. Their names were eventually recovered from a shift roster cross referenced with Maggie's account. They were John Park and Alexandra Dmitrenko. They did not do it for recognition. They did it because the numbers were wrong, and they knew, specifically and technically, what wrong numbers meant out here. That is the actual history of Atmosphere Day. Not the ribbon at the airlock. Not the anthem. Not the 30 seconds of footage shown in every school, on every level of every hub from one side of the base to the other. 2 hours in a maintenance corridor. 3 people and a sensor housing. The amber sky still dark outside. The ceremony 3 hours away. A decision nobody asked them to make. Made anyway, made correctly. Made in the particular silence of people who have spent long enough. They understood that the numbers have to be right. That out here, there is no version of close enough. Elena still lives in Hub 3. The corridors are the same, though the ceilings have been raised in most sections, and the faint smell of sealant is mostly gone now, absorbed into everything or simply forgotten. She has a daughter, 21 years old, 3rd generation Lunar. The girl has never worn a pressure suit outside. She walks out onto the surface the way you walk into a room without thinking about it, without pausing, without any awareness of the specific weight of the history that made it possible. She knows about her grandmother. She has listened to the recording. When Elena asked her what she made of it, the girl was quiet for a while, watching the amber morning shift across the basalt plains outside the window. I think, she said finally, that the people who actually build things are almost never the same people who get remembered for building them. Elena didn't answer. She watched the light too. The pale amber of the only sky she had ever known, held in place by 18 years of careful engineering and one uncredited morning in a maintenance corridor. It was held in place by the stubbornness of people who understood that the numbers have to be right, even when no one is asking them to check. If this story stayed with you, share it. The official version is already everywhere. The real one needs a little more help finding its way out. See you next time.